Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is in Washington, D.C., where he has just met Vietnamese Prime Minister Pham Chinh, head of the ASEAN-US Special Summit. US President Joe Biden will be holding his first face-to-face talks with the bloc at this two-day summit. For all this, let's cross to Leong Wai Kit in Washington, D.C. Wai Kit, what's on the agenda for Prime Minister Lee, and what does Singapore hope to achieve at this summit?
Well, so Mr. Lee certainly seems to have a very packed day here in Washington. In fact, at this hour, Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong is probably wrapping up his bilateral meeting with his Vietnamese counterpart, Mr. Pham Chinh, here in one of the hotels in Washington. I was at the start of the bilateral meeting, and you can see just how both leaders were very enthusiastic. There was laughter, there was robust greetings of how are you, there was handshakes, most importantly, something that couldn't take place at the height of the pandemic. Now, this bilateral meeting is relatively short, 30 minutes, so it's not perhaps enough for both leaders to work out in greater detail how both Vietnam and Singapore want to work forward in improving economic ties and business links. But the 30 minutes perhaps is enough for both leaders to build a rapport, for delegations on both sides to open a friendship bank account, if you will, for them to both tap on as they move forward bilaterally. Now, Prime Minister Lee is expected to be meeting many people here in Washington, including the ASEAN-US community leaders here in Washington. Of course, one of the highlights would be the actual meeting among ASEAN leaders and US President Joe Biden. And of course, ASEAN is keen to discuss a wide variety of topics, including the upgrading of ties between the regional bloc and US to what's known as the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. And on that front, I understand that Singapore is keen to push for those upgrading of ties.
Well, not just that, Wai Kit, we understand the situation in Myanmar will be one of the issues that will come under scrutiny. Tell us more.
Oh, definitely, so definitely. I mean, we know for a fact that the Myanmar army is not invited to Washington for the ASEAN-US Special Summit, but the significant development here really is that the National Unity Government, or NUG, from Myanmar side is actually in Washington. Now, the NUG is of course formed by the ousted lawmakers from the pro-democratic camp, and its foreign minister, Ms. Zin Ma-aung, is in Washington. In fact, at this hour, she's expected to be meeting the Deputy Secretary of State, Wendy Sherman, here in Washington. This is not their first interaction, but it will be their first in-person meeting. They first met online last year in August. Now, the NUG's foreign minister, Zin Ma-aung, is also expected to meet Malaysian Foreign Minister Saifuddin Abdullah later this week, and if this were to happen, it's not going to sit very well with the Myanmar army because they have chided the Malaysian Foreign Minister for engaging the NUG, calling him reckless and irresponsible. But one key development here really is whether or not the efforts to informally engage NUG between ASEAN or ASEAN member states and the NUG, whether efforts for those engagements would be kickstarted here in Washington.
Oh, thanks for all those updates, Wai Kit. That was our correspondent Leong Wai Kit speaking from Washington, D.C.